Today we're talking about the government debt and what is happening in the craziness of the US job market and everything, because you guys been commenting and saying on my last video that the government debt isn't the same as the debt that we have as private citizens, and I somewhat agree it's different. So this person is going over, this is extremely short-sighted. The government debt is not the same as private debt. Federal debt is basically money we own to ourselves in future. But as long as the U.S. economy and the government are viable, then there is no way in hell that we default on our debt. Additionally, if you really want to compare corporations versus government management, just look at how short-sighted and profit-driven private companies are, right? Only look at the first quarter, maximize profit for shareholders while at the workers' expense. So there is crazy thinking going on here, because people from the government can't even agree among themselves when you look at these comments. Thanks for your post. Seriously, private businesses doesn't do everything right. That's very generalized. Having worked in government myself, I saw the corruption and the very expensive labor for the given skill being utilized. So what we're going to do is I'm going to have some references in this video from another creator, actually a professor, so you guys kind of believe me, and this is where I kind of got the information from. So let's zoom to my desk and I show you guys what I'm talking about. So a little bit more context though is that when we talked about that, you can go watch his video, the full one, to get kind of more context, because they're going off of a way bigger number of debt than we actually have right now, because they're when you look at how it's been calculated, some people only calculate the stuff that we actually own, and some say the unfunded stuff, and then the dark numbers. And so this is where it comes from. So let's go to the desk and watch it.
Myth number 3. Government borrowed from the Social Security Trust Fund isn't really debt because we owe it to ourselves. Well, it turns out there is no ourselves here. The trust fund belongs to current and future retirees. So when people retire and the government does not have the money that it has promised them, one of two things must happen. Either the government must increase taxes on future workers to pay for the Social Security and Medicare obligations it has promised, or the government has to cut the promised Social Security and Medicare benefits that it had promised to retirees. Either way, someone must pay.
So there we go. There you have it. So if the government doesn't have enough money at the time of the money that they'll borrow against it, then all of a sudden we're in trouble, right? And so to top it all off, I have another video right here, and then we're done, and I'm going to give you some corporate stuff that I think I would do. So here we go. Let's watch this one. It's another short one, and then we're good.
Myth number 10. There's no way to fix this problem. It turns out that there is. We could have a balanced budget within 5 years if we followed this recipe. First, cut all spending this year by 10%, no exceptions. And if there's some things you don't want to cut by 10%, then cut something else by more, so that when you're done, in total, you have cut by 10%. And when I say cut by 10%, I mean the word in the way any normal human being uses it. When politicians say cut the budget, what they mean is to increase the budget by less than they would actually like.
Okay, so the problem is that person's saying that, like government. And if you're in the private sector and you do stuff, right? And my best analogy for working for the government or doing something is like, let me say I got a credit card that says government on it. So I say, hey, can you go get me a wrench? You can go and get a wrench wherever. And you don't know the limit of the credit card, right? So you could just you look at it, it's nice and fancy, and it's kind of secured by all these people around me, right? And so you say, let me go get a wrench, right? And so you can go and get any kind of wrench. You can go to Home Depot and get it at Home Depot, or you can go to Harbor Freight, go to Harbor Freight. Or what you can do is you can say to your buddy, hey, let's go and lobby Congress and say, let's lobby all these people, say that the wrench needs to be certified. And if the wrench is certified, government certified, we're going to charge them $200,000 for that one wrench that is similar to the one you can buy from Home Depot. And it's probably the same manufacturer, they just hugely upcharge you. So what does that do? Well, that credit card has now a balance. And now the whole community owns that balance. And so what does that do? all of a sudden you have to increase taxes because you just bought this super expensive fridge. And now, all of a sudden, all your people have to pay it. And yeah, you can lend against it, you can do a whole bunch of other stuff, but at the end of the day, you own it, right? Because we own it. And then all of a sudden, it's like, yeah, it doesn't matter who's gonna own it. At the end of the day, it's still us Americans, right? And the same is with your credit card. When you go out and you say, I have a business, I have a tire shop, I have a dentistry, and you go out and you go to Costco and you buy with the Costco credit card and you go buy a couch, a desk, or whatever it is. And you say, well, technically, I don't own the desk because it's secured by the credit card. So basically, what it is that the credit card company owns the desk, right? They're just not going to say, oh, you own a desk here. But technically, if you don't pay it off, it's the credit card companies because you bought it with their money and you're just going to have it. And if you pay it off over time, it becomes yours more and more and more. So the thing comes in when you cut budgets, when you cut all these federal employees and you say, hey, this is super bad and this is really, really shitty. It's always these people that are in government or that are being hit the most, obviously, are going to be the ones that are screaming the loudest. And that is always the case. And that is actually really sad when you're the one that's going to be impacted by these cuts and layoffs, right? Because if you're not being impacted, and I saw this on TikTok and I saw this on YouTube Shorts and I saw it everywhere, people that are not in government are laughing and saying, haha, welcome to the private sector where you're just not guaranteed. And they're doing all this other stuff, right? And I think there's always collateral damage that's really, really bad for a whole bunch of people. So if you're actually putting in your hours, putting in your time, putting in your skills, and then you get cut, that's really, really bad, right? But there's a lot of people that show up for an hour a day and then just leave, or you can't find them and you don't even do it. And that's what Trump actually said in one of his interviews, where he said, if they don't respond, we don't even know if they're there. And now check this out. When you're at the government and you don't even know if these people are around or what's going on, and now you're like, we don't even know if these emails that we're paying salaries are even around. And so we want a response from them to even know if they're around. And I kind of get where they're coming from. Do I think it's right? I don't think so. I think they should have probably asked managers to say, hey, report on what your team does and ask, kind of have it down, but they just send an email to everybody. And there must be some strategy within all that madness that's going on. Or they just kind of do madness tornado and see what's going to happen and come out. Because I know they fired some of the wrong people. I think at the FDA, I saw an article that they said that they fired the FDA, the robotics, the med device oversight people, and now they're like, oh my gosh, now we need to get them back because they fired the wrong people. So they fired the people that were actually around, and probably the people that weren't around, they didn't fire. So it's just crazy when you look at it. And I just think that the budget has been out of control. You cannot say that it's not been out of control. And I think both parties have to agree that, hey, going into that much debt, and I had it on my last video, and I can put it up here again. If you pay $1 in taxes, 39 cents go towards interest payments. And that is just not very well spent money when you think about it. When you're looking at it like, hey, we got to spend 40% of what you're paying taxes goes towards interest. And it's just money tossed down the drain. And how do you fix it? Well, you got to start somewhere. Is this the right way? Debatable. I don't think so. I think there's way better ways of cutting it. I think there's way better ways of cutting the waste and just letting all these people go. You got to cut the red tape. You got to cut the bureaucracy. You got to make sure that, hey, we're starting to use emails. We're starting to move away from paper-based systems and make it more efficient, make it more accessible, make the processes easier, right? More understandable. So you don't need to go and say, oh, we can only deliver via mail. So yeah, it is absolutely crazy, but hey, every government works like this. So in Switzerland, my grandpa passed away, right? And so if the Swiss government wanted to reach me, because if there's a will or something else, this is how this would have went down. So the Swiss government had to make a request to the Swiss embassy in San Francisco, because that's the district we're in. The Swiss embassy would have had to then notify the district's court in Las Vegas, and the district's court would have had to serve me papers saying that, hey, in paper form, that, hey, this is, like whoever passed away, and this is just it. So if you have stuff like this where it's going to go over so many steps, it's going to just take forever, rather than just sending it over email, being like, hey, here it is, DocuSign, boom, boom, be done, right? But no, it's got to go through all these steps. You're going to have somebody knocking at your house saying, hey, here's a letter, please sign here, you got a form of ID. So it is just absolutely crazy when you think about it. This is the process of the government, right? And some say that's justified, some say it's not. But the problem is it's inefficient, right? It's inefficient how you do things. And as we grow more in populations, we do it, it's starting to reach its limits. And when it reaches its limits, you got to innovate, and you got to innovate and automate at one point, right? Private companies do it, and a whole bunch of other places, should kind of keep up with it. Not at the extent of private companies, but, should start doing it a little bit. So when you're thinking about the government, and you're like, I'm gonna do this. From somebody that runs a small business, I'm just like, there's rooms for improvement. There's rooms for, hey, maybe we can cut some of the red tape and make it more efficient. And then all of a sudden, when it's more efficient, you have, and you can actually let people go that shouldn't be working there. You can hire the right people. Because I think we can all agree, working 1 hour a day, and I'm curious to hear what you think. Working an hour a day is not sufficient to get a full-time salary. That's part-time. That's not even part-time. That's like a part-time gig, right? And I know people are going to be like, well, I'm going to unsubscribe. He wants me to work. But I think that's the whole idea of having a job, right? You contribute something. So if that's you and you're going to be unsubscribing, well, I'm sorry. But I do feel that you need to put in some time, some effort, and work a little bit more than just a few hours a day, and then be done with it, right? Because if you're a federal employee, there's pride that comes to that, right? And that was the idea in government. When you would have asked my grandpa, and he was like, oh, he's working for the government, federal government. So he was very good at what he was doing, and they were highly looked at in their communities, right? And now it's like, oh, you work for the government, you don't do much, huh? So how the views and stuff changed over time, right? And now we're like, hey, let's cut it and let's save some money. And I don't think that we should be doing it the way we did, as I saw earlier in my video. But it is just time where we say, hey, it's just time to trim fat and save money, because it is just crazy when we spend so much money on interest. And yeah, some people are going to be unemployed, and then that comes into place, right? Now you lay them off, now you got to pay them unemployment, and you got to hire people to fill those applications and do all that. And it's time to get jobs back to the US so these people can work, right? Because I don't think that universal income is going to come around and do all that good, as people have been saying. Because I think if universal income is going to come, then it's just going to raise the prices even more for that amount, right? So there's like interesting ideas floating around with all of that. But hey, if you haven't filled it out, I think you still have time to fill out that form and see what's going to happen. I think some places like the FBI said, oh, you don't need to do it. And other places said you definitely got to do it. And some people just got laid off. So let me know which boat you're in, because I'm curiously interested. Because man, it's just crazy to see the national debt go through the roof. Everything just expensive. And one thing I do want to say before I finish this video is, one thing how to get inflation and prices under control is to start laying off people. Because if you start laying off people, you got to start worrying about, oh, where's my money going to come from? I can't take the trip. I can't go out and buy a freaking Yukon, and I can't spend $1,600 on a car payment. I can't, go out and spend money on random things, right? So what does that do? It will tighten people's wallet. Well, at least you hope so if they don't use their credit cards. But you can only use the credit cards so long till they're going to be like, you know what? You're done. We're not going to give you another one. because most credit cards are unsecured debt, right? So who's going to take that if you're going to default on it? And if you go through bankruptcy, the credit card company just got to write it off, right? So it's brutal times. Brutal times. Very interesting though. And man, have you guys seen how gorgeous Las Vegas is in the in the early spring? And it's like 70 out. So this is just absolutely gorgeous. I love it. We have like the most amazing sunsets ever. And it's like, it's windy, but man, having these sunsets, gorgeous. So yeah, let me know what you guys think. If this is a yes, if this is a no. Did I miss something? Let me know in the comments below. And if you're watching these videos, make sure that you hit that like and subscribe and that bell notification. So if you want me to respond to your comments, I mostly respond when the video goes live. So if you want to be one of the first people I respond to, unless you're a channel member, then I always try to respond to you. Then be super early to hit that keyboard and write some comments so then I can respond to it. If you watch my video a month later on and then you post a comment, most likely won't be seen. But hey, if you hit that bell and you comment right away, big chances you can have conversations with me. So I appreciate it, and I'll see you guys in the next one.